process a bit and think about what you would like to explore today. You can type that into the chat while I sort of formally kick things off here. So this, of course, is a support call for inner work, Q&A, and processing anything that's going on for you physically, mentally, emotionally. A little bit about the call. It'll go up to 60 minutes long, depending on what's going on and what kind of questions or processes we want to work with together. The rest of that applies to when we do this on Zoom. So obviously here it's only chat. These are a few links if you would like to stay in touch and do more of this together, including interact during the week with each other. Some community groups here on Facebook. Obviously here in the YouTube channel, if you'd like to subscribe, you'll be able to see when we go live and do more of these, as well as the blog where people are, well, right now it's just me submitting different articles. As far as these types of processes, inner work that I like to facilitate, just be aware I'm not a doctor, a licensed therapist, a psychologist, or any type of medical professional, nor do I have any degree in those fields. So just be aware of that. Just consider this to be in the realm of guided meditation, emotional exploration. Tension may release, there may be benefits. Of course, that's the whole reason we're doing this. I wouldn't be interested in sharing this or facilitating if it didn't have positive benefits in my own life and others. But I don't consider this a substitute for medical or psychological care in any way, nor do I endorse any philosophy about this. I'm recovering from a knee surgery, and I'm very grateful for all the, medicine, the doctors, the surgeon, physical therapist, everything involved in that. I'm very grateful for that. So occasionally, sometimes people do donate. Some of you already know the link. I just want to let you know that any donations that are sent during this, I would be forwarding along to the George Floyd Memorial Fund. You can, of course, just use this if something inspires you today or you feel like you get some benefit of it. You could use it as an inspiration to donate to that or a cause of your choice. But just so you know, for those of you who do occasionally send some donation my way, that's where it will be going. So, thanks again. And let's see what we have. So for anyone who's typing in what's going on for them, I'm going to do a bit of a guided sort of meditation of sorts here. Something to... If you were watching any of the sorry about that. Trying to watch my own video to get the chat going here. Let's everyone take a deep breath. Close your eyes if you're in a position to do so. And feel that breath as it moves through your body. With everything that's going on for you physically, mentally, emotionally, which may be charged up right now, it's very valuable to take a second to bring some of that attention just to something physical, visceral, that's right here, right now, and can help center and ground you. Notice, especially if there's been a lot of emotional and other types of tension going on in your life, if bringing your breath through the body, you notice any places where there's tension or resistance happening. What you can do is just consider this a bit of a time where you're putting energy on supporting your body, supporting your emotions, so that it can be more effective with everything it's having to deal with right now. So if any part of you feels like it's irresponsible or you're abandoning something by putting attention on yourself, see if it feels okay to look at it through the lens of, in order to be the most effective I can in whatever that means for me, even to be more clear about it, I'll need to be able to provide some support to those parts of me that are under stress, that are not able to function right now as well as they could. So just breathe into those points, those places where you feel tension. And just imagine that breath being an energy that's just going in to sort of support what's there. You could think of it like a internal massage. Something that's saying, in order to be as effective as we can, to be the support we want to provide to others, to be the solutions we want to be able to provide, we need to be able to support ourselves. Just give yourself permission to do that. Allow your mind to do whatever it's doing in terms of what it's concerned about. Its concerns may be very valid to how it wants to be in the world, to what it wants to provide and support right now in terms of out there, so to speak. See if you can relax anything that sees a conflict between taking care of myself, supporting myself internally, supporting my own body and emotions, and being effective, being able to provide support, provide a voice, provide whatever you believe is necessary. See if you can relax those barriers at all and feel them as being connected to each other. Notice if any part of you sees or perceives that going inside yourself for a bit, turning your attention to what you need, what you're feeling, where the tension is for you physically and emotionally, is seen as like you're abandoning the world or abandoning any responsibility or retreating. And just relax that perspective for a bit. See if it's possible that the best way to actually be in the world, the best way to actually provide any type of solution in whatever way you can, is to be very present. You're not much good on the battlefield if you're totally wounded and others have to carry you, or if you're too stressed out to be able to make a clear-headed move. And so as you're continuing to breathe and feel into wherever those tensions are in you, you can also add something physical like tapping, which I'm doing here. Just tapping on my collarbone. Allowing your mind and whatever parts of you are very sort of tuned into the world right now to continue to do so in whatever way it is, while simultaneously taking some deep breaths, supporting yourself and being present. And to to begin to see for yourself that the two can function at the same time. That the more presence and breath and clarity you bring to your body, to your mind and your nervous system, the more present you are to whatever is right here, right now, and wherever you can be, helpful, supportive. So I'd encourage you to keep bringing that into your life, especially now when things may be very tense. To realize that the best way to be effective, whether that's taking care of your own business or helping others, that giving yourself even those brief moments to reconnect, and that the breath, the attention, the awareness can make you more present even while you're active and while you're being involved. It can help make you more effective and more powerful. So now as you sit with that for a bit, please let me know if
Giving
you have
yourself
anything
even
coming
those-
up. Anything else you'd like to work with specifically? Otherwise, it'll just be that little guided meditation for today. Just sit with that for a bit. Please let me know if
Giving
you have
yourself
anything
even
coming
those-
up. Anything else you'd like to work with? Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything from anyone today, so maybe everyone's just in their own zone. So I'll just allow you to hang out there. And if you do have something that comes up, you know where to reach me. Great. Alicia, thanks for sharing that. Do you feel, when you say that, like, is that a positive thing? Is that a sense of excitement? Or is it a sense of urgency to kind of have a result happen, like a sense that something might be unfulfilled? Thanks, Joanna. Can you please talk more about how we can focus on the feeling we want to feel, as you've mentioned before? Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how much I can talk about it, but let's explore it by noticing what happens when you do go to focus on whatever you either want to feel, want to experience, or what you want to see out there in the world. And notice where your mind goes, if it's able to even entertain that thought. And that's what I think is useful to explore. Because hypothetically, it's no different, right? There's a lot of us, it's really easy if I say, okay, think of someone who makes you really angry. For a lot of us, it's not hard to think of that person, think of that situation, and start feeling anger. And I'm not even saying that, anger is bad or wrong. But I would describe it as not something you want to feel most of the time. But a lot of times it's very easy to do that. So again, in theory, in principle, it's as simple as, okay, what do you want to feel? And do you have a way of stirring that up? So is there a memory? Is there something in your life where you did feel that? Is there a situation you could imagine happening? And the good thing is you don't have to share it with anybody. You can kind of pose it as a question to your mind. Is there a way I can even at least imagine, or imagine a situation that if it were to happen would actually generate the feeling I want to feel? So if you're really stressed out with a rent situation right now, or you're not able to work, finances, anything going on around that department, you could ask a question like, okay, what would it feel like if that were suddenly resolved? If I actually got, a rent forgiveness, or something happened where the money came in, more than enough to cover it. And notice if your mind jumps on it real quickly and doesn't allow you to actually feel that sense of relaxation and what that feeling would feel like. And also notice if any part of you resists that as somehow being useless. And say, look, the point of this is not to say, okay, well, just feel that and then you won't ever have to do anything or deal with anything. It's a place, it's a better place to operate from, right? You begin to actually see different decisions, different perspectives, different ideas. If your body, mind, nervous system is sort of reacting from the place of, okay, this is what we want to feel, this is what we're going for. What could move me towards that? And that actually seems to shift, like what, literally what you see, what kind of thoughts become available. And some of you might have seen in the Facebook group where I posted about how I was doing this with a financial thing recently, where, from back in the day, less experienced, bought too much of a stock and kind of wrote it down and bought more. I was like, wow, what did I get myself into? Right? And it was looking pretty bad. And in, visualizing, actually sitting with, and so much of the thoughts being how negative it was, and, oh, I screwed this up, and this is definitely going to zero, to kind of consciously feel into, okay, but what would it actually feel like if I woke up and suddenly the thing turned around? And to actually visualize that very specifically, like that number in that account changing. Going up beyond what's rational and just, wow, that would be amazing, right? And as I shared in the group, it did happen, right? The thing shot up like crazy, almost bizarrely, right? And then part of me, I, of course, could never prove or say that, well, because I did those visualizations, that made a stock go up, right? Of course. But you never know what degree any of that actually plays into things happening. But it made me also a lot more calm, because from the other perspective, right, I would have, sold it all because it was like, oh, it's too late, it's a lost cause. Could have made a very rash decision there. I also could have sold it all the moment it started going up or started freaking out. But having sort of grounded my body a bit into that experience of, okay, what are we going for here? What would that actually feel like? I was then making sort of the moves and decisions from a different place. So I sold a little bit as it went up higher. Luckily, I didn't sell it all instantly, which I probably would have done. It kept going up, sold a little more. Was able to be more calm and relaxed. So it was using what the situation would be in that case that would actually make me have that sort of sigh of relief, or that sense of this not being urgent right now. Good. My mind says that any feeling that doesn't come from a response to the environment is irrelevant. However, I'm surprised how easily all feelings can come up just with intention. Good. So notice it doesn't consider your mind and emotional reactions to actually be part of the environment. If you're in a positive place, if your body is feeling good, that's part of the environment. That's going to affect the next thing you say, the next move you make. That's actually going to, even on a more primary way, affect whatever comes up in the, let's call it outside environment, right? If you're in a bad mood to begin with, someone can do a little thing, and then you can end up making a decision that you regret for the rest of your life. So what really is the most relevant here? And try to let your mind and the part of you actually question that and see it directly in whatever way it actually perceives it. Okay. If I sort of generate or redirect my focus or attention, that's irrelevant because it's not happening from the environment. Well, how differently do I respond? What different things happen? Based on my inner environment. Exactly just how irrelevant is it? Try to look for your own experience and your own playing with it so that it's not just a logical thing that makes sense, but you could actually feel right now how your current inner state right now is affecting the thoughts you think, the way you respond, the things you choose to do, right? And so if you begin to see it as it's actually relevant and useful, right? It's useful in a practical way, not just, well, if I hold the picture in my mind, maybe the thing will appear, right? This sort of like wizard, the secret kind of reduction of it, right? Your mind's not too likely to accept that for most people. I don't know even what my thought is about it. I'm more interested in what you can demonstrate to yourself, and once you demonstrate something to yourself, it can become interesting to actually test the limits of it. So can I feel just how relevant it is where I'm directing my focus and my attention? Go ahead and focus on something you're annoyed with for a moment. And then focus on, it doesn't matter the situation, because there's a lot of stuff that you might still remain focused on. But shift the feeling. Okay, so what would I want to feel here? There's all different types of feelings, right? How could I feel like I'm contributing? What would it feel like to actually feel like I'm useful or supporting someone here? Try to ground these in things that apply in a really direct way to your life, not just let's all try to picture a bunch of money so a bunch of money appears, right? It might be too much of a reach or not feel like it's real or relevant. What would it feel like to feel like I actually have a plan of attack? a way of negotiating this, a way that I could potentially be earning other ideas? What would it feel like to be moving towards something positive? And then notice that if by generating that actually opens up different way of feeling, different way of thinking, different way of acting. So you can update me on that if you like. Let me know if that's useful and helps your question at all. Make myself a little bigger here. Okay, another comment here. I've been dealing with a lot of craziness around me besides the global and United States stuff. Yeah, as if either's not enough, right? Like a crazy landlord who won't take care of things, and loud, crazy neighbors. Yes, I definitely have and maybe do have those. I've done and then it cuts off, so feel free to let me know if there was more there. And I've been surrendering. Yeah, so one thing you can explore there, and I've done this actually specifically with the neighbor thing, right? Is just take a look for a moment at what you're defining surrendering as far as what you actually do inside your body and mind, what your interpretation of that is, and what you expect it to do. Because there's different teachings out there and different things that I've been caught up with for sure in the past, where I'm like, okay, if I really quote unquote surrender to this, then they'll stop being loud. And not to belabor that too much, but I of all these things, one of the things I've consistently found the most effective is, okay, what is the feeling I'm going for here? Like if the neighbors moved out or calmed down, what would the experience be in my body, in my emotions? And is it possible for me to tap into some of that, to explore some of that, even before it happens? Because any technique I'm doing from the place of, I really hate this, I really want it to go away, but I'm kind of trying to do a trick to make myself accept it and hope that will make it all go away. I've come to see that as often a lot of just mental gymnastics with a certain percentage of internal movement that's actually useful. So first thing, tune into what you actually do feel about it. And don't jump to any technique like surrendering or letting go or anything like that as a way of bypassing or sort of sidestepping what, in other words, surrender to what you actually feel, which might be like, I am so pissed off at these people. I can't believe they're being so disrespectful. And I tap while I say these things, sort of the commentary that's going on for me internally, so that I can actually feel all of my emotional tension around that being expressed, like kind of getting out of my system. Sort of cleaning the slate a bit by acknowledging first what's actually going on inside me. How annoyed am I? What's my unedited thoughts and feelings about this? And as you let that come up, that alone can calm things down a bit, because there's a lot of internal conflict going on between what I actually feel about what's going on, how much it really does bother me, and what I'm trying to do, how much I'm trying to surrender to it or let go of it. So again, you let go of your point of view or position or attempt to manipulate your feelings at first. It's like, what's here is here, and let's own it and actually feel it so that it can begin to move. And you begin exploring with how much of that edge you can take off and how much you can get into that state of, okay, now if this were to calm down, what would that feel like? And what some solutions would be. And so, continue to define surrendering, because you're saying, I've been surrendering that I can't change this. Yeah, that's good. In the sense that, you can't necessarily control other people's behavior, right? But I would question, like honestly question, I'm not saying it's true or not true, but to pose the question, how much power is there to shift how I experience this? And I really make sure I'm open to all sorts of answers to that, including physical things, right? In my apartment, I'm almost never not wearing these. And there's certain tracks I found, certain things that are like low volume, got the noise canceling on, or I can't even hear it. I don't need to surrender or do anything if I'm actually not experiencing it that same way. Oh, great. I've explored feeling to the nth degree for 10 months. It feels great to sink in and surrender. Yeah, interesting that you experience them as different, right? I mean, if you think of surrender to me, you're just, okay, I'm just surrendering. I'm just sort of sinking in to whatever's here. And that's great because you may feel a bunch of stuff when you do that. But you're no longer, maybe if you've been doing it as a technique, like I was saying at the beginning, maybe you're someone, like you said, who's already done that a lot. And yeah, in which case, no need to keep kind of forcing yourself to like, okay, I got to keep feeling into this. It's more like you just make sure you're not pushing it away. That's for me what that first part of it is. It's like, just make sure I'm not sort of doing a little tiptoe or dancing things around in my mind where I'm trying to let go or surrender, but really part of me is like doing this versus like, okay, whatever's here. Another thing you might experiment with that works well for me is as it feels great to sink into surrender, just like when we do any type of guided meditation, or at least the type I usually do at the beginning of these, you notice how you can put your attention on your breath. Like you suddenly become more aware of your breath. Not that you weren't breathing before, obviously. But when you kind of zoom in on the breath, it's like the details of it become a lot more clear. You might actually notice it more. When I do have something that feels really great to sink into, or like an emotional state, I've been experimenting with kind of like, in a way, breathing into that, like, okay, I'm going to put my attention, I'm going to let it sort of absorb and sink into this feeling, this place that feels right, just like I can do with my body. So thanks so much for sharing all that. I'm sure it's helpful to a lot of people. Let's see. Okay, if a sense of urgency, if money were a resolved issue, I would have another thing to resolve, and another, wanting more, developing greediness. Yeah, interesting. Oh, okay. When you surrender, it comes up as instrumental. Oh, okay, great. You're processing it though. Beautiful. Isn't it amazing how, like, these intense feelings of grief and sadness and, even like fear of death can come up from situations that are like, loud neighbors. I mean, I've been amazed at the stuff that can come up in me from actually that exact situation. Yeah, so that, Alicia, that part that says, another part wanting more, developing. I'd have another thing to resolve and another. So just notice the framework for a second. Notice the part of you that sees these things, which is really just life, the next thing in life happening. Some part of you interprets that as a situation to resolve. Right? So as best you can, visualize a really young kid, or maybe even yourself when you were like a year old or less. And there was a process unfolding, right? You were going gradually from crawling to walking. Maybe you sort of skipped crawling like my niece. And there's the next thing. There's the next word you're learning how to speak. There's the next stage of growth. It never stopped from the day you were born. But you probably didn't conceptualize it when you were really young as, okay, now I got to overcome my walking blocks. Now I got to clear whatever is stopping me and all these resistances around learning my first word. You'll notice in all of us human beings, there like friction and, okay, I'm trying to do it and I'm falling down. Like that is a natural part of the process. There's something else that's interpreting it as another thing to fix or another thing to resolve. Because from that perspective, it's going to suck because, there always is the next thing. Even if it's just, surrendering more deeply, right? Even that, most people I know, there's a sense of sort of like, oh, this could go further. It just sort of is going further, right? Whether I think about it or not, whether I even think about it in terms of further, maybe a sort of fully realized being is sort of out of that loop, I can't say, but if you don't interpret it in that way, it might even be exciting, right? What's the next thing? I was performing with a musician who I would work with him sometimes in New York. He wrote all of the Schoolhouse Rock stuff, speaking of when you're a kid, right? 3 is a magic number and all of that. And one of the concerts I played with him in New York, he was 93 years old. I played with him either his 93rd or 94th birthday, right? And there was still new music, right? Still new ideas. There was never a moment that said, okay, I figured out music, right? He was already very successful and loved. So in addition to that sense of the next issue to resolve, see if you can question even that concept of like, okay, it's resolved. Like, okay, I got money handled now. Like it's a thing that you check off. Okay, I got my career handled. I got music handled. I got spirituality handled. Like, well, I hope for all of us, we get them beyond the point of like they're suffering or they're a great cause of pain. But they're not just these things that end, right? They continue to grow and deepen if we're lucky. In a way, what we're all searching for when we do this type of inner work is for that growth and those experiences to change like faster and even in more interesting ways. So try tapping and just say to yourself, it's never over and that's okay. And see how that feels inside you. Right? do I really want any of it to just be over or handled? Yes, I want it to move from beyond a place of suffering. But notice that if you don't think about it that way, right? A kid doesn't go, okay, walking is handled. The thought doesn't even happen, right? It just goes on to, oh, cool, now I'm walking around the house, right? Thinking of my niece again. Now she's, right? She's able to kind of get around, which to her is very exciting, and to my sister is exciting, but also I'm sure, like, okay, we got to manage that now. We got to make sure she doesn't, got to keep the doors closed, right? But again, notice from the day you were born, you were never not just sort of moving, quote unquote, forward in that sense of like, the body's doing more. I think even as we're older, like even if the body starts doing less, other things are continuing to sort of deepen and grow and evolve. So let me know how that feels for you. Dave, okay, hi Evan, regarding the tapping video you did on pain, I wonder how this can be applied to chronic fatigue from place of inner work. Interesting, yeah. I mean, I would just experiment with a similar approach to see what, let's say, elements going on for you internally may be, let's say, contributing to or not helping the cause. Obviously, talking medical, right? I'm not qualified to say, like, okay, we'll do this and that will solve chronic fatigue. But you can use some of the, whether you're physically tapping or not, for me, it just adds another dimension to it. Just in a very practical way, like, okay, as my thoughts are in a certain direction, what does that do to my energy? And right now, part of why I did that video is because this part of the process for me, like, it's really painful. It's probably as painful in some ways as, not that long after the surgery. Like, it's way more painful than it's been in the last 2-3 months because I'm doing, like, the exercises, right? My knee's got to start bending again. It hurts like hell when it's bending, and I'm getting on the bike and it's like, ugh, it's like you're stabbing needles into it sometimes. But that actually is what's needed. And so there's a part of your mind, well, if you ever listened to, I was listening a lot to David Goggins, the, ultra athlete, how your mind will automatically say all pain is bad in a way and want to fight it and want to find an excuse not to do it. But even while I have something very physically painful here, I notice that if sort of my mind or my body and emotions go in a certain direction, it's like suddenly the exercises literally feel harder to do. I feel like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should rest today, right? So very different than the body actually telling you need to rest. There's always that, oh, maybe I should take a day off, right? It's not really coming from what's needed. So I've been noticing that as I just, focus on what you're feeling, that tiredness, and just explore, okay, what seems to move the needle even very slightly in a positive direction for me? Right down to even just, okay, how am I breathing? If I take a couple deep breaths into my stomach and just connect to my body a bit, what does that do to my energy, right? Never assuming that, like, anything is right. I mean, maybe unless a medical professional tells you to do that. But this thing I'm sort of coming up with, right, my own acronym, like the first letter is C, and it's curiosity. And if you can start from the place of, like, not, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do, unless you've actually, like, had an insight. But, like, okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to tap, or I'm supposed to let go, or I'm supposed to deep breathe, or whatever. And it's more like, okay, first step is, let's be curious. What does my body, what does this condition respond to? Let me try it. So just notice the difference between, well, I know you're supposed to deep breathe, and therefore I'm going to try to force myself to do it, and say, okay, got this fatigue. Let's focus on one thing for a moment and see how my body reacts to it, right? How is the breath responding here? What's that do for me? What's the direction of my thinking? That sort of more subtle background thinking, right? Like, oh, why did this happen to my knee? I can't believe I broke it. For those who don't know, I literally broke it on the floor of a doctor's office, right? I've never been to a hospital in my life, at least as far as being treated. The first time I go in one to get a checkup, I break my knee on the floor. It's like irony to the max, right? Now, even a little bit at the time, there's a direction I can go with that in my mind where I actually see the irony in it. It's actually, I literally laugh a bit. And that makes me more useful. I'm not trying to force myself to see irony in it. It's just exploring, okay, what direction of thinking actually seems to do something for me? If I get pissed off about it, does that fire me up to change? No, it just kind of, for me, it just kind of puts me in a funk. Well, maybe I lost out on all this time. Well, who knows, man? I had some pretty deep insights from this whole process, right? So I explore, try to examine the direction of my thinking in those subtle ways and see what effect is this having on me, right? Again, curiosity. And notice how I'm not even assuming that a, quote unquote negative type of thinking, that must be bad, right? Because especially in the world right now, there's some situations where thinking of something that's quote unquote negative, like your mind, like a book might say, well, that's the positive one, that's the negative one. But the more quote unquote negative one, it fires you up. It's like, no, this needs to change. I need to find a way to participate in that, right? Again, curiosity, number one. Not assuming, well, every time what I need to do is sort of close my eyes and try to visualize myself in the happy place where there's running water. Sometimes, perfect. Other times, for me in my life, it's been you need to get your stuff together, man. You've been kidding yourself. And you need to take an honest look. So it's not always this sort of self-love in that way. It's more what's needed for me right now? What do I need to hear? So I hope this isn't going too off the rails for you in terms of how you apply that. But again, it's sort of rather than, okay, this is the thing I do when I'm feeling fatigued. But you're just sort of really exploring physically, mentally, emotionally. When I go down a certain road, when I go down that road today, what impact is that having? So let me know if that is helpful for you. Oh, thanks, Alicia. And that's Love and Growth and Research of Things We Still Don't Have Reached. Felt amazing compared with the heart of a 94-year-old musician still in love with passion and life. Yeah, right? I mean, I'm really, really get into that. I guess you could call it a trap, where I'm like, this is a problem to be solved. Right? Once my money is handled, then... And the reality is I'm not in a situation where I'm starving by any stretch of the imagination. So I know there are lots of people on the planet, a disturbing amount, actually, that would just look at me, even being able to survive in New York at all, saying, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to have enough money to even do that? And so I can look at one angle and go, well, there's a vision for, what I can do with money and use it better and grow it and make more of it. But from many people on the planet would say, well, you've got that handled. You don't have to worry about that. Certainly not the way I do, right? I don't have to worry if I can buy food. So by plenty of metrics, you could say, well, I have money handled, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, it's not this arrival thing. And you've probably felt that so many times, right? I remember thinking, if I ever got hired by this one musician, or maybe even the one we're talking about, right? Oh, if he was ever calling me to play in New York, then I would just feel like I've had arrived. But, I felt proud, I felt really good, and then probably a week later I was, but I sounded bad, and so-and-so could have played better, right? I've never had that moment where it's just like, I've solved it all, I figured it all out. It just sort of keeps unfolding, and that's where I kind of got into this. Okay, it doesn't ever stop. It's how I'm looking at it, how I'm perceiving it. And yeah, I want to be more like Bob, the 94-year-old. His name is Bob Duro. I would like to be much more like that at age 94 than like, okay, I got my money handled in my 30s and now whatever that means, right? That sort of attitude. I like what you said about self-love. Oh, thanks. Not sure everyone likes that kind of thing, but I'm glad you did. Lately, I've seen true tolerance not as doing nothing, but instead doing what's needed based on full acceptance. Yeah, right? I mean, a lot of the people that did the best for me, it told me what I don't want to hear. The two most important teachers at college were the two that weren't telling me I sounded good. Right? I had a lot of people say, yeah, you're good. You're young, you sound good, you got things going on. And I had two in particular, one that I work with a lot now as a sort of I'll never be his peer, but that he hires me and perceives me as a colleague. But he was the person who were like, dude, not happening, right? You don't sound good. Because I'm talking to you from the perspective of if you were to be hired by a professional, not talking to you as you're a college student. You're doing pretty good for a college student, kid. And so that was more what was needed than a very, let's say, loving, in the sort of traditional, like, oh, just tell me how good I sound. Just say, you're doing great, you're doing great. And I find it to be a balance, because I could and have let those things say, oh, man, I suck. And because he told me that, now I'm just down on myself and I can't practice and I'm unmotivated, right? So it is a balance to say, hey, okay, cool, you got some honest feedback. I can take it for what it is and do what I need to do with it, and so on. So yeah, what's needed? Sometimes you really need that pat on the back. You need someone to tell you, hey, you're doing okay. You're doing all right. And other times really what's needed is, hey man, you're kind of delusional right now and you're stuck in a loop and you've convinced yourself of otherwise, right? Yeah, I like that. What's needed based on full acceptance. Full acceptance is sometimes, I got to accept. I'm not really approaching this in the way that's most useful to me. Okay. So I'll just pause for a moment, take a deep breath, see if anything else is coming up for anybody. Thanks so much for all the great questions and comments that I could, use to sort of facilitate exploring this stuff for myself and some different approaches. And yeah, breathing and just in general has been more and more coming to the forefront for me, just realizing how effective that is, even if you're not really doing what you might call any particular technique. Just, okay, something's coming up, or you're just walking around and enjoying nature or whatever, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that right now. Just to kind of breathe into what's happening. It does so much. Okay, anything else from anybody? I'll hang for another minute. Oh, thanks, Brock. Maybe it's partly the new microphone, too. Oh, hey, Ursula. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no problem. You never need to have a topic. Okay, I guess that seems to be it for the day. It's also just getting up on the hour now. So thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for being part of this. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to know, if you'd like to see the notifications of when we go do this live. I do send out emails about it, so that site is, let me put it in the chat. Because sometimes I do them here. I'm kind of experimenting and exploring and getting feedback from all of you. Sometimes I just do them on Zoom, where we can actually interact and speak at times. That, of course, lends itself to a smaller group. Thanks, Evan. I'm working a lot about being brave and realize how lucky I am we are. Different perspective, even if we have the same things. Yes, it's fascinating, right? Cool. Thanks so much. Thanks for the kind words. Look forward to seeing you all hopefully sooner than later. Stay safe. Make sure you take some time to check in with yourself and give yourself or reach out to others for support, especially as things are intense, so that you can be as good as you can for yourself, and then you can support others who need it from a better, more centered place for all of us. So thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day or night, and take care.